who mocked this idea of praying.
Shannon, I'm a believer, and I believe in prayer.
California's NAACP wants to get rid of the anthem altogether. The group claims the Star-Spangled Banner is one of the most racist, pro-slavery, anti-black songs in the American lexicon.
In the 1 year after his election, President Trump has come through with a strong growth rate, low unemployment, and a big stock market rally.
That's low cash, which, by the way, I'm short of.
There you go. You are low cash. You know, there's an ATM in the basement.
Right. Until I use it, I don't want to pay the $3 fee.
Although the last time you used it, that I know for sure, you left it. Keep in mind, we've got an ATM down on the same level as the subway in New York City, and Brian left his iPad right on top of the ATM.
What did I do? I called down to the control room, and they sent their best person out to retrieve it.
This is what I love. Everyone thinks that New Yorkers are not nice, that everything's going to get stolen here. It was still there on top of the ATM machine.
They thought it was a setup. It was so obvious.
It's got to be a sting. If I take that, there's got to be a camera here. Next thing you know, it's a
Brian,
problem.
do your kids just keep you in line?
They pick up after me. I'm like, do you know where your keys? Find Dad's keys. Do you know where he put his wallet? He doesn't know where his wallet is. Can someone find it? They don't criticize. They act.
There you go.
They just.
All right. Well, if you were up late last night, like some of us were,
Looking for your wallet.
That's right. That's right. You probably saw the president speaking. He is in South Korea, and right now he's actually in Beijing. But last night, that video there was from Seoul. He was at a dinner, and he had a very strong message for North Korea. The South Koreans love him there because he's coming in and he's saying, we're not going to take your mess, Kim Jong-un. They called him the leader of the world, Donald Trump. And this is what he had to say last night.
Today, I hope I speak not only for our countries, but for all civilized nations. When I say to the North, do not underestimate us and do not try us. We will defend our common security, our shared prosperity, and our sacred liberty. The time for excuses is over. Now is the time for strength. If you want peace, you must stand strong at all times. The world cannot tolerate the menace of a rogue regime that threatens with nuclear devastation. All responsible nations must join forces to isolate the brutal regime of North Korea, to deny it, and any form of it, you cannot support, you cannot supply, you cannot accept.
So there you've got Donald Trump, who was elected president of the United States 1 year ago today on this date. And there he is as the leader of the free world. He said to Mr. Kim, North Korea is not the paradise your grandfather envisioned. It is a hell that no person deserves. And he said the country is, it's run like a cult. And he had something very, very pointed. And he said to Kim Jong-un, the weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer. They are putting your regime in grave danger. So the writing is clear. Stop it already.
Right. He also pointed out the day prior that there is a pathway to talks and a better way. So he's not totally slamming the door, but he's trying to reaffirm South Korea. We have your back. Also interesting because this is a liberal leader of South Korea whose natural penchant was forget the THAAD missile. Let's start talking to North Korea and let's reaffirm relations with China. They have a reality has set in, and now they seem to be talking pretty regularly, and the bonds seem pretty strong. I would like to add this, too. South Korea is also committed to buying a lot of our weaponry, which is going to help our economy.
He said billions of dollars going to help people have jobs here in the U.S. because he says our equipment is better than any other countries. He also mentioned, he gave examples of why North Korea, why this guy is so evil and such a dictator. Talked about Otto Warmbier, talked about a lady who was pregnant in Korea with a Chinese man's baby and what they did to that baby because they said the baby wasn't worthy.
Yeah,
Right.
and Brian, to your point earlier, when he was in Japan, he was alluding to the fact that Japan's going to be able to shoot missiles down as well. So I got a feeling, while they haven't announced any big defense contracts thus far, and we had Kellyanne a couple of days ago, and I asked her about details, and she kind of backed off a little bit. I would imagine when the president comes back, he will unveil, not only did he go as a statesman, but he went as a salesman. And we're going to hear in the next week or two about a lot of defense contractors. We're going to make a lot of money in Asia.
Yeah, they're traveling with the president. And just quick thing on Japan, if they change their constitution to allow offensive weaponry, that would really get China's attention. And that's the last thing China wants. They still break out in hives every time they think about World War II. Meanwhile, breaking overnight, a big night for the Democrats is Ralph Northam wins the race to become the next governor of Virginia, and it wasn't close.
And in New Jersey, Phil Murphy beating out Kim Guadagno.
That's right. And Griff Jenkins is live in Washington, D.C. with details on both races. Hey, Griff.
Jenkins.
Ainsley and Brian, good morning. Democrats are celebrating a big night, claiming their first major victory since President Trump took office. In Virginia, Democrat Ralph Northam defeated Republican Ed Gillespie by 9 points, 54-45. Northam ran on a clear message, tying Gillespie to President Trump, something that he continued in his message in his victory speech.
Virginia has told us to end the divisiveness, that we will not condone hatred and bigotry, and to end the politics that have torn this country apart. It's going to take a doctor to heal our differences.
Then the party was interrupted, and what appeared to be Trump supporters turned protesters, booing the governor-elect as he was led off the stage, and the protesters had to be removed from the room. Now, Gillespie chose not to campaign with or embrace President Trump, distancing himself publicly while accepting his endorsement, something the president faulted Gillespie for over Twitter last night. Nevertheless, the former RNC chairman conceded with class, wishing Northam well.
Governor-elect Northam is a good man, and I appreciate his service to our country and our Commonwealth, and I wish him nothing but the best success as our 73rd governor.
And in New Jersey, the other closely watched governor's race, Democrat Phil Murphy easily defeating Republican candidate Kim Guadagno by 12 points. All of this certain to fuel a lot of talk about 2018. Guys, Democrats say they've got a plan for anti-Trump sentiment, but others say they may be overreading those results last night.
All right, Griff Jenkins, thank you very much. Keep in mind, Ed Gillespie lost by more than the final poll showed. It showed 5. I think he lost by 8. It looked like 8 or 9 right there. But also keep in mind, both the Commonwealth of Virginia and New Jersey were both states that Hillary Clinton won in, and neither of the Republicans in those states really embraced Donald Trump. In fact, Ed Gillespie, who ran the RNC, so I mean, he really is part of Republican establishment, he did not call on the president to make any appearances on his behalf, but his opponent, who won, had Barack Obama in, had Joe Biden in, and had the support of the teachers union saying, look, if Ed Gillespie is elected, he will support school vouchers and also charter schools, which the unions hated.
Well, then at the very end, Gillespie did reach out to the president and said, will you do these robocalls for me? Some people thought that was
day.
Right, not as genuine. So the president tweeted this. He said, Ed Gillespie worked hard but did not embrace me or what I stand for. Don't forget, Republicans won 4 out of 4 House seats, talking about those special elections. And with the economy doing record numbers, we will continue to win even bigger than before.
And he's got an Alabama Senate seat for Jeff Sessions. We'll see if Judge Moore wins that. What do people in Virginia care about? Believe it or not, even though the economy's going well, that is their number one thing, 28%. Healthcare, the most controversial thing in America, 26% of the voters said that's why I voted the way I did. Education is 14%. So we'll see. He takes over for a Democrat in Terry McAuliffe, and prior to that, the Republican basically almost ended up in jail. So the people of Virginia don't have a great feeling for Republicans.
Meanwhile, the people in the state of New Jersey, the number one issue for them, taxes, because it looks like the guy who is coming in wants to raise them. We
got to work a little bit harder, a little bit longer, Steve.
Isn't that
so
counterintuitive? I mean, isn't that...
Hello?
All right, so Steve's going to be around for a lot longer.
That's right.
No retirement at 65.
By the way, Steve, you work for 2 hours for free. The last hour is the only one you're getting paid for. But that's the way it works in America now.
Right.
Wait a minute. I only work 3
You only work
hours
3 hours a day?
Yeah.
Lucky duck. All right, Ann wrote us. Thank you for your comments. Ann wrote us and said Gillespie was not smart enough to embrace the president. He could have won, but he was seen as middle of the road, not enough to bring out Republican voters.
And the governor race, this is from Jim. You know Jim. The governor races lost yesterday are due to the lack of luster. Republicans in Congress blame the lack of action on the ACA repeal and replace, and now they're dragging their feet on everything else. And now they got to go sell this tax reform, which a lot of Republicans aren't happy with.
You know, Diamond and Silk, the women who have got the Twitter account and the Instagrams, they tweeted this out yesterday. Message to those Republican politicians running for office. If you don't support our president and his agenda, then the people will not support you.
But right now, this is what people like Ed Gillespie look at. The president's approval rating, according to the recent polls, is 36%. He's more of a traditional Republican who ran the RNC. Right. So he had to try to split the baby.
Sure, but keep in mind, polls were wrong, as we learned a year ago, and Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. And in the 4 special elections for congressional seats where Donald Trump went out and campaigned for people, for the most part, they won.
Hard to believe he's been in office for a year. Where were you when you heard the news? We were all up. Remember that? It was like midnight when Pennsylvania was called. Send us emails and let us know where you were and what you think over the last year. In the meantime, we're going to...
Yeah, and what you were wearing. Tell us what you were wearing.
Hopefully you were dressed. Ryan reminds you to get dressed every day.
Exactly.
Good morning, guys. And good morning to you at home. Yes, definitely send in those comments. And while you're doing that, let me get you caught up on this Fox News alert. Vice President Mike Pence heading to Sutherland Springs, Texas today in the wake of the horrific church shooting, where survivors say the gunman walked pew by pew looking for people to shoot, targeting crying children and babies. Churchgoers are saying the shooter attended the church's annual Halloween party with his kids just 5 days before his attack. And we're now learning the gunman's hometown of San Antonio is looking into whether they mishandled a sexual assault investigation years ago. 2 people are busted for allegedly helping a pair of dangerous inmates escape from a courthouse. Tremel McClua and John Bivens slipping away from bailiff outside to freedom in Santa Clara, California. The inmates somehow unlocking their shackles with a handcuff key before jumping into a getaway car. Authorities charging Marquita Kirk and Renee Hunt in connection to the escape. Both inmates are still on the run. National anthem outrage going beyond kneeling on the field. Now California's NAACP wants to get rid of it altogether. The group claims the Star-Spangled Banner is one of the, quote, most racist, pro-slavery, anti-black songs in the American lexicon. They want it replaced with another song. The group also trying to get NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick back on a team. Hey, Texans just signed a guy yesterday who hasn't thrown since 2011.
I was surprised that Texas didn't sign him because he plays very similar to the quarterback they just lost.
He's a free agent.
You should try out for the U.S. soccer team then. There's a shot.
Right, the team just failed miserably.
All right, 7:13 here in New York City. You just heard it. President Trump's warning to North Korea, don't try us. What did General Jack Keane think of the president's big speech in South Korea? We're going to ask him next.
And on the anniversary of the president's historic election, our town hall panel will break down the year of Trump.
Please do not sit. Delivering a direct warning to Kim Jong-un while urging the rest of the world to join him and us. Here to react, Fox News military analyst and former U.S. Army Vice Chief of Staff General Jack Keane. All this, General, is a pregame to the big show. And the big show is the one-on-one meeting with our president and the leader of China. What has to happen if General Jack Keane was advising the president?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, center stage for this whole visit is this meeting that's coming up. And it's going to have strategic implications actually for years to come. What's clearly on the table, obviously, North Korea's on the table. He needs more sense of urgency, and he needs more economic impact out of President Xi. That's number one. But here's what makes it so delicate, because he actually has to push back on President Xi also, who has revised the order in the Pacific out there. He has encroached on our allies' sovereignty.
Who? Who is that?
This is China. President Xi. He's
encroached. And our allies in what allies?
Our allies in the region. Vietnam, the Philippines, Japan very specifically. And what he has done very cleverly is they have a strategy encroaching on that sovereignty without ever firing a shot, where they want to be the dominant power, replace the United States, and they are largely succeeding in that. President Xi also, and this is a fact, he sees the United States as a declining power, China as a rising power, and he believes in 10 to 20 years, China will replace the United States as the preeminent global power in the world today. And he just has been given the authority by the 19th Communist Party Congress to pursue those goals. So here's the art of diplomacy. We need something from him to denuclearize North Korea for sure. We have to push back on that. We also have to push back on the trade imbalances, the currency manipulation, the cyber espionage that's going on, stealing our intellectual property. So President Trump can't just ask for something. He has to push back. And he has to stake a claim that the United States leadership is going to be felt in that region.
So we have to show it with power. And it's not so much, hey, we're good friends, we're going to work this out. It's got to be shown directly and sternly. Can that be done diplomatically? Or has the ground already been plowed for some type of joint announcement today?
I think the ground has been plowed because of the relationship. It started at Mar-a-Lago, and I believe that one thing that President Xi understands, strength and weakness, and most authoritarian rulers recognize it. Putin certainly recognizes it. The guy running Iran recognizes it. And when our president reacted so immediately and so strongly to the chemical strike that took place in Syria at the time that Xi was there, actually that was fortunate for us, as harmful as it was to the Syrian people. He knew, I'm no longer dealing with Obama.
General, this is the pregame. I want to talk to you again on the postgame because it's going to be quick in and out for the president as these two major powers lock horns. Meanwhile, thank you very much, General Jack Keane. Caught on camera, an American flag stolen from a man's home. We're going to give you the details on that in just a moment. Don't miss a minute. This is Fox and Friends, and Alan Dershowitz is going to walk out.
Good morning to you. Time for some quick headlines, and we'll get to the weather a little later in the show. But let's start with this story. Incredible video of a plane's engine engulfed in flames as it lands in Seattle. The Hawaiian Airlines plane flown in for maintenance with only a crew on board. The fire started by a problem with the engine and quickly put out. No one was hurt. A man cheats death on the train tracks. Take a look. You can see the guy jump off the platform and run to the other side as a train is pulling into the station in Australia. He gets back up with less than seconds to spare. And an American flag swiped from a home 8 times this year. But the family finally caught the thief on camera. The bald crook clearly seen swiping Old Glory off the front porch in Burlington, Vermont. Police now investigating. Steve?
Thank you, Jillian. She admitted the DNC was rigged in a major way to favor Hillary. Well, now Donna Brazile backtracking in a big way. Listen to this.
I use the word rigged because that's the word Donald Trump used to describe our election results. The word I prefer to use, and I said in a book when I talked to Bernie, I prefer to say cancer. I did not like the cancer, okay? I call it cancer because we did not rig the primary.
Here to react is Harvard Law School professor and lifelong Democrat Alan Dershowitz. Professor, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks. You know, as a Democrat, it's very upsetting to hear this. Rigged, cancer. There should be, I've said from the very beginning, there should be an independent, nonpartisan commission set up by Congress, like the 9/11 Commission, to look into this whole election. This election is a disaster for democracy. If there was any Russian influence, we want to know about it. Without pointing fingers, without trying to indict people criminally, I think the same thing should be done and investigate what went on in the Democratic Party. It's a mistake to start with a special counsel because they do everything behind closed doors. We'll never know what really happened, but an independent commission looking into the investigation, the goal being to stop it from ever happening in the future. That's what America needs.
But isn't this what happens in politics?
It shouldn't
Doesn't
happen.
surprise me. I mean, this is why no one trusts politicians.
Politics are dirty.
We expect this to happen.
But there's a big difference between politics being dirty, which we expect, and politics being criminal. And we shouldn't cross the line and accuse people of criminal, whether it's the Republicans yelling, lock her up, or the Democrats yelling, lock him up. We should stop with the lockup. Let's look and find out what happened, and let's cure it for the future.
If you're, as a lifelong Democrat, how much damage has the revelations from Donna Brazile's book done to the party, to the brand? I mean, think about it. If you were a Bernie supporter, and a lot of people weren't, suddenly it's like, I don't trust those guys because they were in the tank for her.
And a lot of people thought that originally, and I think that Hillary lost some votes as the result of Bernie supporters not doing it. Look, in one respect, it's a good thing. We want transparency. Let's learn everything we can about how dirty our politics is.
Yeah, but we wouldn't know it if she hadn't written the book.
And that's what's so surprising. She was such a loyalist, and she was so devoted to the party, and now she's helping to tear it apart. Is she doing it because she's really in favor of transparency and democracy? Is she doing it to sell books? Is she doing it because she's angry? Whatever the reason, it's not a good one.
What about what's happening in California? The Daily Californian, there was an op-ed blaming you for Israeli atrocities. That was written by Matthew Taylor, saying that you have blood on your hands. Then there were rumors that you were getting paid by the Trump administration. And so you tried to respond to that op-ed, and what did they tell you? What happened?
Well, you know, the Daily Cal, as many college newspapers today, are totally one-sided. You can say whatever you want about people like me if I'm pro-Israel. I don't get to respond. So they absolutely, categorically refused to print my response, even though it was a very factual response. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they, you know, basically it was a blood libel. They said I had blood on my hands. I was responsible for perpetuating Israeli atrocities. And when I try to respond, they say, no, we're not interested in your point of view. And that's what's happening on university campuses all over the country today. One point of view. If you don't like it, you don't get to hear the other point of view.
And see, you have a platform to come on Fox News and share your side of the story. But for other people, they can write anything they want about them, and then they don't give the person a chance to respond. They might not have the platform.
And then people believe it. And that's how they're miseducating the future leaders of America. Because Berkeley is educating. Princeton tried to cancel a speech 2 days ago from the deputy foreign minister of Israel because they didn't like what she had to say. They only want to hear one perspective. They don't trust the students to make judgments about speakers. They have to have committees making censorship decisions of who gets heard and who doesn't get heard.
Well, a year ago, nobody thought Donald Trump would be the next president of the United States. He was elected, and Dr. Dershowitz has written this book. It's called Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. It's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for dropping by.
Professor.
All right.
Still ahead. The left cried treason after a Russian lawyer met with Donald Trump Jr., but it turns out that wasn't the whole story, and it could be bad news for the Democrats.
Cover your ears, Alan. And on the anniversary of the president's historic election, that town hall panel here to react to a year of Trump.
I'm proud to say that we're all American, in God we trust, living the dream. It is November 8th, the day that we make America great again.
A victory for Donald Trump in Ohio can be called by the Fox News decision desk.
Ohio has picked the president the last 13 elections in a row. This is a big deal.
Fox News decision desk is now projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of North Carolina.
We know we're going to win tonight, but come what may, he built a movement.
Donald Trump will win the state of Florida.
This is an ideological and electoral revolution of the kind we haven't seen since Reagan.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, and there goes her blue wall.
In the Clinton campaign headquarters, Jen, we looked in there and it was very still.
It is subdued. There are moments where you could hear a pin drop.
Fox News can now project that Iowa will go to Donald Trump. We are going to make this decision now. The Fox News decision desk has called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This means that Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States, winning the most unreal, surreal election we have ever seen.
I can only say that while the campaign is over, our work on this movement is now really just beginning.
It has been exactly 1 year since President Trump's historic victory over Hillary Clinton. And once again, we have convened a town hall panel to talk about where we stand. Good morning to all of you. Good morning. All right, show of hands. Who a year ago was positive that Hillary would win? A little more than half of you. All right, who predicted that Donald Trump was going to win? Only 4 of you. All right, who is pleased with year 1 of the Trump administration? All right. Aaron, let's start with you. Why?
Well, I think, look, we need to do some things on regulations, right? In terms of, we've already reduced the cost of regulations, but in terms of legislation, we do need to get some things done. But if you look at some numbers, he has made some really, really great accomplishments.
Just on his own without the help of Congress.
Absolutely. It's been totally unilateral. For example, the Dow has had 72 closing highs since President Trump took office. 72. Our most recent was on November 3rd, and that was the all-time high. Merger and acquisition transitions totaled $1.2 trillion since he took office. So our economy is surging. Unemployment is down below almost 4%, which is a 17-year low. He has done a lot of great things for our economy.
Okay, so we had Stuart Varney on in the first hour of the program, and we were talking about how the economic numbers have gone crazy. Happy days are here again, is what they're saying down on Wall Street. Who's actually felt that in their pocket, though, where you've seen your 401k go up or your bank account? Elliot, tell us about that.
I'm invested in index funds, so index funds go up and down with the S&P 500 in general. So no question, the S&P's had a great run since he became president.
And what do you think about the next year?
Well, look, I don't know if they're going to get a tax package through. And you mentioned he's got no help from Congress. That's true, but that's on him. Why is he picking fights on Twitter with moderate Republicans who are his natural allies?
Chuck, you're right next to him. When you look at the two gubernatorial races, both went to Democrats in blue states yesterday. Neither one of them really embraced Donald Trump. And when you look at Ed Gillespie, he's as establishment as they get. What's the message to politicians on the Republican side when it comes to embracing Donald Trump if they want to run for high office?
You know this. I run campaigns for a living, and there's an old adage: is you don't let your opponent identify you before you get a chance to identify yourself. The other thing is figuring out how close to Donald Trump do they really want to get. The base of the Republicans and the base of Democrats are going to show up, and what we have to realize in 2018, the Republicans need to. And I'm no Republican strategist, but if I was doing their playbook, is how do you expand that base? Because last night proved that there's a wave coming on the Democratic side, even though maybe we had never seen wins like that. We picked up 27 state House legislatures since he's been in office. Maybe I should have raised my hand when I said I was happy for it. It's good for Democratic strategists.
It's good for your business. Wendy, what do you think about year one for Donald Trump?
To be quite honest, I don't think it's gone well. And I think if he wants to maintain his seat and run again in 2020, you cannot sell the same thing without evidence. And that's what we're seeing right now. He has to have evidence, and that evidence will be rooted in legislative wins. And so we have to make sure that we hold him accountable. And I don't think that that's necessarily a partisan issue. That's an American issue, making sure our president is held accountable.
And David Webb in the back row right there. One of the problems for Donald Trump is he wanted to drain the swamp. He went to Washington. For the most part, the swamp's still there.
Well, yeah, the swamp's going to be there for some time. You're not going to unravel what has been 7+ decades of the swamp growing in Washington. You can pull the plug on it, but it's going to take time to unravel the bureaucratic problems that are there. There is a deep state in the sense of a legislative structure, a support system, and lobbyists and special interests. You look at the District of Corruption and the documentary that was there about D.C. and the surrounding power and the money that circles that city, that's not going to go away. And we're not even really into true year one, just year one since the election. So we can't write the legislative obituary on the Trump administration when you literally are not even into the full year one of the administration.
All right, on the other side of the back row, we've got Lauren Arpel. Lauren, what do you think about the fact that, as we heard earlier, Congress, while they are Republican-controlled, not really helping the president?
They're not really helping the president, and you're starting to see it with people like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker. They're looking at their internal poll numbers, and their constituents are starting to retire them, and they've chosen not to run for re-election. And they need to get on board with this president, or they're going to see it in their next election cycle. They need to put their personal differences aside, whatever their issue may be. Maybe their primary candidate didn't win, and they're upset about that. Maybe they have a personal issue with him, that they don't like him, they don't like his personality, they don't like that he tweets, whatever the case may be. They need to put it aside, and they need to remember why they were elected, and they need to start doing their job.
All right, Nikki, you're right next door to her. I know you're a Democrat.
I am a Democrat.
But you're sympathetic to the Trump voter.
I am sympathetic. I wrote about the plight of the white working class during the election because I think it very much tracks with the plight of the black working class. I think that unity is what's missing. In terms of the lack of legislative success by Donald Trump, in some ways, I think that has been to his benefit to have his party go against him, because he ran as a populist, as someone who was outside of both of those parties. And I think that just reinforces for his voters that he's something different. And for Democratic voters, Republicans not supporting him reinforces for us that he's not the person we necessarily want representing the country.
All right, Keisha, down in the front row right here. Donald Trump, when he was running for president, made a lot of promises. He's only in 1 year, hasn't had a lot of help from Congress. Do you feel like he has kept his promises thus far?
Absolutely not. While I can appreciate someone who's real and speaks their mind, I love people like that. I think he did a lot of talk and not a lot of acting.
But don't most politicians do that?
They do, but I think one of his major problems is that he's trying to run the country like it's a business. And I hear all the financial numbers and the unemployment rates are down. But we have to remember that this is a country of people. And I think the legislators are not passing what he wants because they're thinking of what's good for the people and not necessarily what's good for the finances of our country.
Of course, the president right now is in China. He is, he's got some deals going over there. I think we're going to be hearing about. Kieran, you're a former infantryman and in the Marine Corps Reserve. How do you feel about his message of strength through power that he's projecting around the world?
I think it's been outstanding. And, you know, in the past 10 months that he's been president, his overseas trips have been some of his finest hours. His speech in Poland back in the spring or summer was described by everyone as Reagan-esque. He really reminded us the gift of freedom that we have here. If you see some of the pictures of him in Japan with American troops, he's like a rock star to the American military man, who I think under 8 years of Obama felt like you know, they were doing a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy fighting, but the man in the White House didn't necessarily have their back. I think they feel that President Trump has their back.
At your back is Emma. Emma, you're the final contestant we haven't spoken to yet. What's your observation about year one of the Trump administration?
Look, I was a huge Hillary supporter, and I campaigned very publicly for her. I was very disappointed, needless to say. And when it comes to women and policies on women, he has proven to be a bigger disappointment than I had ever imagined. All of his policy is attacking women's rights, whether it be reproductive rights, family rights, when we're talking about funding for after-school programs, early Head Start programs, for military families, for child care for military families, funding is being threatened. So we're not just talking about questionable policies like reproductive rights. We're talking about policies that affect working families, the working families that elected Trump.
Sure. Emma, as you look at the state of your party right now, after Donna Brazile has come out with her book that shows that the DNC, it looks like, was in the tank for Hillary, and all those Bernie supporters, they thought he had a chance, but really he didn't, and all this other stuff, your party's in trouble.
Yes, it's not a pretty picture. It's not a good look. And but you know what? One of the greatest things that's come out of this election is that it has highlighted problems that need addressing. It has paid attention. It's forced us to pay attention to gender inequality. I don't believe that we would have this Weinstein scandal going on if the presidency had not highlighted some of this pent-up anger that is in the American women. When it comes to the party, yeah, we have big problems in the Democrat Party. And Donna's book and the failed election are just evidence of that. So we can get to work now.
All right, exit question once again, audience participation. Can I see the hands of those who are hopeful that year two is even better than year one? Not hopeful? I guess not. That's okay. You're going to be back in an hour, and Ainsley's going to ask you about that. All right, great panel. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, Vice President Pence set to meet with victims and first responders down in Sutherland, Texas later today, as we learn even more details about the church killer's past. Live on the ground there next. And Joe Biden just revealed something big time about President Obama, the man he's hugging right there. Stick around. At the top of the hour, Fox News alert, Vice President Mike Pence will travel to Texas later today in the wake of the horrific church shooting.
This happening as we learn brand new disturbing details about the killer.
Adam Housley is live in Sutherland Springs, Texas, as the details file in. We're finding out what it was like inside that church and why this guy was even out to begin with, Adam, right?
Yeah, Brian, these details are really heartbreaking. You hear about the peoples and the story of survival that happened inside that church. 26 people died. There are still 12 in the hospital. 4 of those are still children. I'm going to give you a live look at the church this morning. The investigation here continues. We're told that they might end up wrap up the investigation here on site by later tonight, but they still have a lot of investigative work to do. Now, inside that church, the story of survivals and heroicism is just unbelievable. Joanne, for example, one mother, Joanne Ward, was there with her 4 children. Her husband did not attend church with her on Sunday. She threw herself across her own children, saving the lives of 2 of them. Sadly, she and 2 of her other children died. This spokesperson.
She said, I would die for my children. And she ended up having to do that in the very end. And that does not surprise any of us in this community that knows her, because she loved them so. And she gave it up for them, ultimately.
We're also now told that the gunman came to this church on Halloween night for a fall festival with his own children, and some of the parishioners here felt that was a good sign, that maybe he and his in-laws were making up. They would not understand that just a few days later he would return with a gun and do what he did here. Some more stories from inside. Another woman talking about how he walked in, sprayed the church, then would walk down pew by pew and finish people off. Take a listen to this woman.
I mean, it was so scary, and that man was shooting. I mean, he was shooting hard, and I could feel the gunshots. I saw them on the carpet, because they have carpet in there. I could see the gunshots, coming down.
And as the investigation continues, guys, there's the same debate we had a few years ago with the terror attack in San Bernardino. They found his cell phone in his car here. They have not yet been able to crack that phone. They won't tell us the make or the model, but it has been taken to Quantico, where they're hoping to be able to access it and get some more information about why or what drove this man to do such evil. Back to you.
And the phone is encrypted. All right, Adam, thank you very much.
Yeah, number one, if he escapes from a mental hospital, don't give him a gun. I'd start there. Meanwhile, Democrats crying for more gun control after the Texas shooting. But President Trump says it has done nothing for one of our biggest cities.
The city with the strongest gun laws in our nation is Chicago. And Chicago is a disaster.
Over 500 murders this year. Steve Cortez here to react.
Plus, he's the son of an Iranian immigrant, served 16 years in the military, and was just elected to a city council. He's going to join us to discuss his amazing life of service in the next hour.
But first, on this day back in 1966, Ronald Reagan was elected governor of California. In 1994, Republicans gained control of the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years. And in 2000, Christina Aguilera was top of the charts with Come On Over, Baby.
Can you make this louder?